Good evening. Good evening, everyone. This is a council workshop. That means it's not a formal meeting. Obviously, it's still public. Let me identify who's here at council. So I see Molly, Jeff, Pam, Paloma. I know that Dan is excused. Are we missing anyone?
And Amber is excused.
Oh, is Amber out
Yes.
as well? Okay, and so those are the two not in who are excused. So that takes care of roll call. I see Christian, who is from the city attorney's office, and I see Chris, the city administrator. Do we have anyone for the city online?
No.
Okay, just want to make sure. So as a workshop, we're just doing our planning for the formal meetings. The next formal meeting is next Monday. The first item on this agenda is an appointment to police chief. So that means the first thing I need to inform the public is that Sans Frost, our current police chief, who's been here for 40 plus years, I don't know if you'll make it to 41, but all right, is going to be retiring. So he let us know that a month or so ago, and we did a look at succession. So there's a very clear succession in the police department. The senior lieutenant is Lieutenant Tom Figlia. And we interviewed Tom because he was interested in the job. Unlike Sans, the first time out, where you held off for a while before you expressed your interest, which led us to do an external process. But we found the best candidate anyway at that time. But without having to go outside, we concluded that clearly the succession is correct. I and the city administrator and the HR director, each of us interviewed Tom, and we all had a unanimous conclusion. Sarah actually reviewed his entire, every piece of paper on him since probably the day he went to school. And we've also had an executive session where the council can ask very open-ended questions of Tom, because there are some materials that we don't go through in public. But I'm just here to say that I'd like to be appointing Tom Figlia to the position of police chief, and I've got him here so that the council might start discussing some things with him in public, and then we can bring him forward if the council is amenable at the next council meeting. Sans is interested in retiring in June sometime, and so we're interested in moving it along if we can. The other thing to note is that in addition to shifting a lieutenant up to chief, there will be other openings directly below that in terms of the senior officers, whether it's sergeant or lieutenant, and we're going to try to move pretty quickly to fill those, not just to avoid overtime, but also just to have the command structure in place. So with that, I just want to hand it over to Sans, and you can introduce the candidate.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Mayor. Thank everyone else for being here, and thank you for your time. I always appreciate that. And the mayor stole a lot of my thunder tonight already, but that's fine.
The 40 years?
40 years, yes. We were just shy of 41. But because I'm retiring, though, doesn't mean I still don't care about this community. I was born and raised in this community. A lot of what I am today is because of my experiences in this community. I have family and friends in this community. I'll always have memories here. And I want the best for Beacon. Even after I retire, I want the best for this city. Lieutenant Figlia is going to be very similar with me on that, because he was also raised in this city and still part of this community. And besides, I think he's going to be very well on a professional level and caring about the city. I know he'll have personal attachments to the city, which I think adds to making that position even better for someone in it. To give you a little background, when Lieutenant Figlia and I were both lieutenants, my job's really centered more around operations and logistics, and Lieutenant Figlia's was centered around administration. And when I became the chief of police, Lieutenant Figlia was a huge help for me in helping with the administration of this job and helping run this police department. I don't know of anybody that knows our policies better than Lieutenant Figlia. He was actually he actually headed the project up for rewriting all our policies and maintains our policies. He keeping us up with all the latest case law and criminal procedure law and any other changes that happen, working with a company called Lexipol, which is made up of professionals that's what they do. They help us maintain those policies along with police agencies across the country. He's our sexual harassment prevention instructor, use of force instructor, de-escalation instructor. All these things are key about keeping this department running the way we want it to run in this city. He knows the people in this community. He knows the geography of the city. He knows the officers downstairs. Right? He knows all our officers. He knows their strong points. He knows their weak points. We have a very good work culture in this police department. We get a lot of compliments from what our officers do on the street. We really don't get many complaints. And when they do, they're usually very minor. And we have a good work culture. And I know Lieutenant Figlia, everybody likes to say, oh, the chief. You can't do that by yourself. Okay, you have subordinates that help you do this. And Lieutenant Figlia is a big role in keeping that culture going downstairs. And I know he's going to do a great job in keeping that. And I can't think of anyone better for the job at this time than Lieutenant Figlia to take my place as the Chief of Police.
Thank you for the kind words,
Wow.
Chief and Mayor. I believe you wanted me to introduce myself at this point, kind of?
At least for a moment.
All right. I'll admit I kept some notes. I apologize for that. I can talk about policies and laws, and talking about myself I find a little bit awkward. So, I moved to Beacon with my family in 1989. I've attended Beacon Public Schools from first grade on to graduating high school. My mother was the children's librarian here in Beacon for 30 years. I say that because yesterday was Mother's Day, and she's a lot more popular and well-liked than I am, so I put that out. In July of 2006, I was hired to work as a police officer here in Beacon. It was my first job as a police officer. I've been here ever since. While a patrol officer, obviously I did the normal patrol officer duties, but I was also made a general topics instructor and made the department's workplace violence and sexual harassment prevention instructor. In April of 2015, I was promoted to patrol sergeant, and I supervised a patrol shift. In addition, I was selected as the department's use of force policy instructor. I was also given responsibility for maintenance of the department's in-car camera systems. I oversaw the department's body-worn camera pilot program, which we undertook, excuse me, and assisted with policy formulation and implemented the department's Narcan program. In March of 2018, I was promoted to lieutenant, together with another lieutenant. At the time that was Chief Frost. We were responsible for supervising and valuing patrol sergeants and the detective sergeant. I was given responsibility for reviewing and tracking all department use of force incidents for compliance with policy and law. I was placed in charge of the implementation of the department's body-worn camera program, right? We did a pilot program, and then we implemented it across the department, and that went pretty smoothly and pretty successfully. I think the public was happy with it. The officers were happy with it. I'm pretty proud of that, actually. I worked as the police liaison for the city council for reformation of the city's sound ordinance, which I think the mayor and Amber were the only ones who were here at the time. And we also worked together on the nuisance property ordinance, which needed to be reformed for constitutional requirements. In 2019, I oversaw and implemented procedures to ensure the department's compliance with significant new discovery and bail law changes. In June of 2020, as you guys are aware, the previous chief and captain retired simultaneously. At that time, during the height of a pandemic and a nationwide protest movement against police brutality, I worked with then Lieutenant and eventually Chief Frost to liaison with protest leaders to ensure the safety of all of those involved in the protests. Beacon, we had more marches than any other local community, including one with a sizable counter-protest, which had several tense moments. And to the credit of the officers working and to the members of the community who were demonstrating, there was not a single arrest that needed to be made, not a single incident of property damage or personal injury. After the retirement of the captain, the position was eliminated, and I took over the majority of those duties. It included recruitment and overseeing the selection process for new police officers. It also included management of the department's record management system, and the most significant of those responsibilities was being placed in charge of the internal affairs investigations and of overseeing and managing all personnel complaints. When Chief Frost announced his retirement, I put my name forth for the position of chief because I have a long investment in this community in general and in this department in particular. I want to continue to build on the work we've done over the past 4 years to consistently strive to improve relations and communications with the community, both to improve the perception and trust that the community has in the police department by reinstituting the bike patrol and expanding our presence on social media through consistent news releases to keep the public informed about what their police department is doing. And I want to improve on the well-being of the officers who serve the community every day by improving their working conditions as well. I've lived here for a pretty long time. I've sat down with the public. I've sat down with people. I've heard their experiences and their stories, both positive and negative, when it comes to interactions with this department and with other departments. And of course, I hear the concerns and the needs of police officers on a daily basis who come here every day, willing to put their lives on the line at a moment's notice for each of us. And I want to do everything I can do to help make this the best police department we all can have.
Thanks, Tom. I'll open it up to any questions from council.
Thanks for coming here. Can you say another sentence or two just about why you feel like your role in the Black Lives Matter protests and the counter-protests was so successful? We didn't have any major incidents?
So I think it came down to a matter of community policing. We were very fortunate that there were some people in the movement who were willing to kind of open up to us as well. And we were able to kind of build a relationship and communicate clearly with one another what everybody's intentions were.
Great, thank you.
I think that you touched on a lot of this, but already in bits and pieces in one way or the other. But as you said, you've been in this community a long time, you've been in this department a long time, and that institutional knowledge is potentially very valuable to this community. Can you just say a little bit more about some of the lessons you feel like you've learned over the years, and then also a bit about, more about your goals for the future?
Sure. I mean, I think we kind of talked about this too in the executive session, right? The department I came into is a different department than we have now. And, you know, we've learned a lot of lessons about the positives of community policing, of good use of force reviews, of being open to the public and transparency. So those are the things that really that we've taken over the years to improve the department.
Speaking of future things, you were also involved in the Police Advisory Committee. I think we had a presentation roughly a year ago, and I'm just curious your thoughts on any next steps from the recommendations that came out of that committee.
So I think to hit the ground running, first we kind of, you know, we've spoken about this as well, about the data that we need to kind of start gathering and using to kind of inform how we police the community. One of the areas is traffic enforcement. I really want to start kind of monitoring like right where accidents happen versus just where, you know, and it's important to be receptive to what the public tells you, but sometimes there's a perception of a problem, whereas you have accidents, say, in another location that's telling you, hey, this is a problem you really need to focus on. So I do want to kind of try to use more data to kind of inform where we're deploying our resources.
Thank you.
Can you just dig a little deeper on kind of what your vision is for the future? I know we touched on this last week, but just so the community can hear.
Sure. I mean, is there a specific area that you kind of want me to?
I guess the community policing would be something that I would like to hear more
Sure.
about.
You know, one thing I think that, you know, Chief Ross did is he's gotten us on a really good track. We're participating in more community events. We have officers walking on Main Street. Officers are now taking it kind of upon themselves, not even having to be told to go out on Main Street. So I think we're really on the right track of that. You know, there's no amount of community events that you can participate in that's enough. But building relationships with people and having interactions with our officers and people that aren't enforcement interactions are important, because that's where people build trust and get to know each other. So one area of that is we had officers going into the high school more on a regular basis, interacting with students in a positive way. We got a little heat for it on social media, but you know what? I think, you know, ultimately that was something good that they did. Also, I think we're in a position where we can probably reinstitute a bike patrol. It would be, unfortunately, at this moment, be somewhat limited due to staffing, but with our dispatchers on the desk, we may be able to get somebody out on that. I know that's always very positively received, that officers out, they're communicating with people just on the street on a regular basis as well.
Thank you.
questions, comments?
My questions have been asked, so thank you.
So the department is short, we're down 5? Yeah.
At the moment, yeah.
We have 2 in academy, so they're not on shift.
Okay, so I think part of, one of the focus this year, and, there may be some issues because we're doing a handoff, will just be how do we take care of that? I'm just, hoping you say that will be a significant focus of getting it done. I know you don't quite control it,
Yeah.
but, in terms of managing, getting that full complement makes a big difference. Just wondered your thoughts.
Sure. So that's actually, that's been a large focus of mine as lieutenant because that's one of the main things that I do. One thing that we're going to try to do, I'm a little bit concerned about it because we don't have a lot of people on it, but we're going to try to kind of hit the Beacon preferred list again. There was just a agility test for the whole county. Everybody who passed the civil service test was invited. There's not a lot of candidates on that list, and we're going to be vying for people. With the city of Poughkeepsie, there was just a news article about how short they are. The town of Poughkeepsie, the sheriff's office, we're all kind of in a rush to try to get the same people. And like I said, I think the key is to kind of try to reach out to members of our community at least first to try to recruit them. Right now, at least I know 2 of the people who passed the agility test are both graduates of our Beacon Youth Academy, so they have some connection already to our department. So I'm kind of hoping to leverage that to bring some more people in.
Yeah, and just for the public, the preferred list is, can you define it?
That's a little bit of inside baseball, right?
Yep.
With civil service. What happens is when the civil service gives a test for a civil service position, for police officers, they kind of come up with a general county list, so that's everybody who took the test.
In the county.
In the county. Well, it's actually everybody who took the test, right? They could be from anywhere.
Yeah.
They took the test and passed the test. And then they also come up with a list that is City of Beacon residents, so right, just within the narrow limits of the City of Beacon. And with that list, it kind of allows us to get at some people who are residents who maybe wouldn't be reachable because their score is lower than somebody else, but who are from here and have a background here, which presents an advantage to us. And it also means that we're not competing necessarily with that person with other jobs.
And just to add on that, with the civil service, there's a rule of 3. So you have to offer the position to one of the top 3 candidates. If you have, 20 people that all got hundreds, you're stuck on the hundreds until they're all hired or they say no. And then only then can you move to the 95s. So this really does help us get to the people that are most likely to want to serve here.
Sort of quickly, since one of your sort of priorities is around communication, can you say a little bit more of a little rundown of all the things that the police department does? Maybe speak to some of our partnerships, like with Mental Health America or with domestic violence, just so the public is aware.
Sure. I mean, day in and day out, right? We're going out there, we're patrolling the city, we're enforcing the laws, we're responding to complaints. So, right, that's the day in and day out of it. But as Paloma mentioned, right, we have a partnership with Mental Health America. We've brought it up, we've brought it up to you guys, so I kind of figure everybody knows, but that's a good point. And so we do have a behavioral health specialist who goes out on calls and actually does a lot of background follow-up with people who we interact with to try to get them into services that can help them to kind of avoid future police contact or future negative police contact, let's say. We also have a domestic violence counselor who is co-housed in the police department. She's fantastic. She's been here, it's got to be well over 10 years. Right? I'm having a hard time remembering when she wasn't, right? And she's in touch with people who are victims of domestic violence. She goes to court with them to support them and is a really great resource for us. And to be honest too, that having that person there kind of helps us make sure that we're staying on the cutting edge of how to handle those incidents. We do, like I said, we do communicate with the public. We have a Facebook page. The union has started an Instagram. That's something we may kind of look into. Another area, and there's some things that would have to be worked out with this, but I would like to try to have some kind of meetings with the public, kind of an open dialogue about, so that, we get a lot of concerns brought to us via email. So then we're responding to those concerns. We're in that area. And then, people know that we got the email on it, but they didn't sit down, kind of with their neighbors and hear, oh, that person was concerned over there. That's why the police are doing that. That person was concerned over there. That's why the police are doing that.
Others? And there will be all right, this is workshop, so public's hearing some of this. Some of it may be repeated at the full council meeting, because that's the one that we vote on. But, you can, if there are any questions here, you can always bring them up as well at the full council meeting.
Sure.
Everybody.
And you guys also have my contact too, so if you want to reach out, I can, if that's okay, I don't know.
All right. Everybody okay? All right. Tom, Sands, thank you both.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Great job.
Thank you very much.
Really well done.
Oh, we got him. That was the last test.
I got it.
Sands.
Thank you so much.
Okay, good. Ed, you gonna go volunteer in that department and switch departments, or are you gonna stick in water for now? All right,
You're not taking it anywhere.
all right, you're coming up soon, all right?
Yeah, we have a few things to go through, and then we'll have Ed on.
All right, so the next three are all Chris. There's an appointment for motor equipment operator. There is a renewal of a community facilities grant for the Howland Center, and there's also an authorization for Fishkill Teller. Can you
Yes.
take us through each one?
Yes, thank you. We have an open MEO position in our highway department from our promotion of Sandra Cabrero, who became a heavy motor equipment operator. We have chosen Jamie Mickle to be the replacement, and you have a memo from our superintendent of streets in your packet. Jamie currently works for New York State DOT. He is an operator, and he has experience in all of the equipment that we would need him to use at the city. He has a Class B commercial driver's license, and when our HR director and superintendent of streets interviewed him, they thought he would be a perfect fit for the department. So we're proposing his appointment at next week's meeting, and he would take effect immediately after that.
Any questions, issues?
No, I just want to know a little bit more about him, so I appreciate you sharing.
Sure. Yeah, and he's been with the DOT for a long time, so he's not jumping jobs. He just wanted a better opportunity, and we are a better opportunity compared to what he had. Yeah.
Cool.
Uh,
So on Howland Center?
Yeah, so on the Howland Center, back in August of 2021, the council had set up a grant program called the Community Facilities Grant Program, and it was to try to help not-for-profits and also businesses on Main Street do facade improvements and also do ADA improvements. So we funded things like the new ADA ramp that's at the Beacon Historical Society. We did some ADA improvements for Compass Arts. We also awarded to the Howland Cultural Center $50,000 for their facade improvements. They were just recently awarded a grant from New York State for the other $50,000, and they've been privately raising money. So we think we have a real chance at moving forward on their restoration of the portico, the front part of their historic building. I attended their gala on Thursday. It was well attended. They are doing a great job raising money. We realized, though, our contract had expired, and our attorney advised us that we should renew that contract. This money is leftover funds from UDAG, which is the Urban Development Action Grant. Those were grants made in the 70s and 80s. So we did go through community development in Dutchess County to make sure that all of the projects we funded would have been eligible under the original criteria of that grant. And I would just want to say, nice job, Teresa Kraft, on that event the other night. The roundhouse was packed. You must have had 180, 200 people? Yeah.
We also just recently went before the planning board.
Great. So they're getting the ball rolling. We'd like to renew their contract, and we look forward to seeing the portico restored to its former glory.
Yeah, I'm curious, as we had a delay in the funding being issued previously, if you can just talk through the next steps. Do we wait until we get something from the Howland Cultural Center before we release the funds, or how that works in practice?
Sure, that's a good question. So if you approve this next week, we would renew the contract, giving them a certain amount of time to basically get the project going. Once they have contract documents signed, we can release the money to them, and they simply have to show us the receipts for the payment. And that's what we did. We had 10 awards in that program, 9 of which have been paid out. This is the last one remaining.
Thank you.
Yeah, I will point out that we gave this award originally. It was the one that wasn't executed. We just want to make sure that the funds get used effectively. And I just will ask that we put some terms in there to make sure that there's a time frame and that it gets executed against the time
Sure.
frame.
Yeah,
Right.
of course.
All right, good.
Chris, you said a little bit about this, but can you remind me the original source of these funds and why we only did it in 2021 and it's not a recurring grant?
Yes.
Yeah.
So these were monies that are available through Housing and Urban Development, HUD, which is a federal agency. We still get some HUD money through our Community Development Block Grant funds that we get each year. That's a recurring thing. These funds came into the city, my understanding is, so that they could be loaned out for facade improvements and other things. And then they were paid back to the city. Once they were paid back, they essentially became city funds, but they were in a segregated account. So we actually have a community development account. During the pandemic, before I got here, the council had set up a micro grant program for businesses on Main Street to try to help some of them survive. And I ended up implementing that when I first came on in 2021. I realized we had about $215,000 left in that account, and I knew that we had a couple projects. The Historical Society had asked us for money, the Howland Cultural Center. So we set up that grant program with guidelines that went through the attorneys, that went through Dutchess County, and we basically spent all but about $5,000 of it.
Yeah, the only thing I could add specifically is that particular program was a revolving loan fund for
Yes.
facade improvements. And the Melzinga bar, which my wife and I renovated 20 years ago, took one of those revolving grants. It was interest-free, but you had to pay it back,
Right.
and then you could lend it again. So that revolving loan program, I think, expired, which
Yes.
that's why we got the funds now.
Right.
But we were given those funds at that time for those revolving loans. A bunch of the facade renovations on Main Street were through that program. Right, and so when we decided to, hand out the funds as opposed to, because the revolving program had expired, we thought we were focused on facade improvements and specific to buildings on Main Street.
Right. And ADA improvements for not-for-profits.
Got it.
Yeah.
So this grant is reimbursable by receipts, so it's possible that the total of $50,000 would not be utilized? Is that-
Oh, no, the portico is at over
Well over.
$125,000, which was why we didn't renew it earlier, because we wanted to see how do you get to done on this? And now they've secured this grant from the state of New York, and they have been privately fundraising. So we think there's a way through it.
Okay, and it's full utilization of the grant then?
Yeah, and more so. I mean, honestly, the building is a historic treasure, and it needs at least $1 million in work. The slate roof has nails that weren't copper, so the the nails are rusting through and the slate is beginning to fall off. You can see all of the beautiful trim work, and some of the exterior has been degraded. Again, they still need more money. If you want to donate to the Howland Cultural Center, they can still use money well beyond this $50,000 grant. So there's your commercial. Yeah.
And the other factoid is, of the grants we did, I believe, was it about 300,000 that was in there? And
So originally it was 275, and your micro grants were about 60,
okay.
and then we had 215 left.
And then this was the largest of the
This
grants?
was the largest grant
Of the
by far.
215.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was grants of between either 5 or 10,000 and 50,000. So they got the largest grant.
Yeah. Questions, comments? Everybody good? Okay. So the third one is something about Fishkill Teller, and you're going to tell us what it is. I don't know
Yes.
what a business opportunities authorization is.
So we are beginning to line up the Fishkill Teller Avenue project. You previously have authorized the award of bid to GNFIA Corp. We are waiting for the Department of Transportation to finalize that, which I hope they will concur with that this week or next week, so we can begin. As part of this, we need to be able to do EBO reporting. EBO is equitable business opportunities. There are disadvantaged business enterprise goals in this contract. There are also participation goals for minority and women employees, and we have to report on that. So this is basically resetting our account, which had gone dormant, and when somebody retired several years ago, it was basically closed off to us. They require a resolution, and this allows us just to do the reporting.
Okay, any questions, issues?
Yeah.
No, you answered my question. I was also curious what this was.
Yes. And Christians, you do the drafting of this, or?
Of the...
No.
No? All right.
Oh, actually, I have a question. Are we involved in the hiring of which businesses, or that's something that our engineer and contractor take care of?
So when the bids were put out, there's a disadvantaged business enterprise, or a DBE goal. When they respond to the bid, they have to say whether and how they can meet that goal. So they identify the subcontractors that are certified DBEs. Usually those are women and minority-owned businesses. So at the federal level, you call it a DBE. At the state level, it's an MBE or a WBE. Then you also have these participation goals for employment, and those are set by the region of DOT that you're in. And again, if you don't meet those goals, you have to explain all of the steps that you took to try to meet those goals. This company met those goals. In their bid, they exceeded the 6% that we needed
And
for
the goals,
DBO.
sorry, and the goals are set by the city in our procurement process, or it's set
No,
by
they're
the state?
they're set by the funding source, which is
Right.
the state and federal DOT. And
And-
again, they are based on region. So like as you get closer to the city, the goals are higher. If you go further up north, the goals are less.
Right. And this login is just to report on
Yes.
whether we did it or not?
Yeah, it's just so I can get access to the system again.
Got it.
Okay, any other questions? All right, fire hydrants.
Ed, you want to join us?
You
at
gonna join
the-
us?
Come on down.
Christian's been very lonely over there.
Got fire hydrants. we
You don't
got
have one
sewer
of the more
connections,
comfortable
we
seats,
got-
but that's okay.
This is the good stuff.
Yeah.
I thought Tom was pretty good.
So just to introduce to the public, this is Ed Balicki, who is our Superintendent of Water and Sewers. And he and Christian have been working on 2 laws and updates to our fee schedule that they're going to talk about tonight.
Good evening. So the first law that we're going to talk about will be...
Ed, pull that in a little.
I'm sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Is that good now?
good.
Okay. Good evening. So the first law that we're going to be talking about is amendments to our fire hydrant law in Section 219 of the Water Code. What started this was there was a developer that was looking at a property next to was looking at a vacant property to develop, and as they were looking at it, we started having discussions, and just the topic came up of like, oh, are those our fire hydrants? And I was like, no, they're private fire hydrants, and that's really what started. We started looking into how many private fire hydrants we have, how do we code enforce these fire hydrants, and that really built out where the law is. And as we started talking about that, then I brought up the fact that many developers, and we get multiple requests for use of the city-owned fire hydrants. So the first part of the law is the permitting part of how we would allow a private enterprise to use one of our fire hydrants, and we created a fee for that. And the second part is the code for the private fire hydrants.
Yeah.
So,
And so our office worked with Ed and also the building inspector on this as well. So there was a lot of discussion about this because this is this question in fire hydrants, it spans not only Ed's department but also legal and also building. And so in the first section of this local law, it basically sets the floor. You can't open a fire hydrant in the city of Beacon unless it's an emergency or you've been granted special approval. The second part of this local law, 219-24, this prescribes regulations governing the permitting process for opening all fire hydrants because, it's a public safety. The city needs to know when fire hydrants are going to be opened, if someone wants to open them. This is helping close some little gaps in the code and making sure that there's enforcement mechanisms as well. And during this process, our office also surveyed other municipalities to make sure that everything is kind of consistent with how other municipalities govern fire hydrants. And so now there's going to be a new section, 219-24.1, which governs private fire hydrants. So this section talks about the new installation of fire hydrants, also the maintenance and standard. We're trying to pretty much standardize new private fire hydrants so that if there is an emergency, fire department or whoever those responders are can access it. And then, also informing owners of their duty to repair their private fire hydrant. Now, there is a new section here about inspections, and in our discussions with the building inspector, we learned that private fire hydrants are inspected during the annual review. So when you look at the amendment to the schedule of fees, that's why there's not an inspection fee for these annual. However, there is a fee for registration because there's administrative costs. There needs to be tracking of these private fire hydrants, and so whenever a private fire hydrant goes down, there's staff time that goes into tracking that, making sure it gets back online, going out and testing it. So they're just trying to really capture all of those different aspects. And also, there are some penalties because people should not be opening fire hydrants unless it's an emergency or there's special circumstances. So one special circumstance is if there is a large construction project. There's not water to that yet. They can apply for a limited permit, which would allow them to tap into that. They would pay for the water usage. There would be a water meter, there would be a backflow device, and also they could only use tools approved for the operation of a fire hydrant. And I think that covers it. Yeah.
And then just the context of this, we have about 600 hydrants citywide. And Ed takes care of them because they use our potable water. So the water that you get into your house is the same water that's going through the hydrants. The number of private hydrants is probably around 24. It's not that significant, but it's important. For instance, Colonial Springs, we had that large fire. Colonial Springs has private fire hydrants, and we need to make sure that when our fire department pulls up and they go to a hydrant, that we're really clear that that hydrant's going to work and then be in good working order. So this is, I really appreciated Ed coming up. Ed flagged this along with the building inspector, worked with Keenan Bean, and this is just, again, kind of getting something that was missing in our code, getting it right.
I really appreciate that this was such a cross-departmental project, and it seems like you all, I'm not surprised you all work so well together on it.
Oh, and our fire chief was also involved in this, Tom Lucchese. He was part of the impetus for this.
Yeah, Tom's institutional knowledge of the fire code helped a lot in drafting it.
Can you help me understand, and as I'm looking at this $125 fee, what examples of non-emergency uses somebody might use a fire hydrant for, or how has that come up in the past?
As part of their annual inspection, they have to fire flow. They actually have to test the operations of the hydrant. So that's an instance of non-emergency use.
But can you give another one where they're actually utilizing the water and we meter it?
Well, in
Like
the
a
other,
construction
yes. Yeah, in the
project
other case, yes, in the other case-
Clarkson, remember we had Clarkson University.
Yes, and we have multiple requests due to like construction projects where there's not water on site, especially the larger projects where they request to use a city hydrant, and we didn't really have the proper permitting that allowed that. So that's what part of that covers, is it's more of construction access until they have water on site. We try to encourage as much them to put the water on site as quickly as they can to limit this, but in some cases, due to the scope of the work, they need some level prior to.
That makes sense. So I don't know if other folks have questions too. I had one more, which was sort of in this project of looking at our 600 hydrants and 24 private hydrants. Was there any, thought or consideration to put into if our map of hydrants is appropriate and adequate, if we need more, need less, if there's some that are redundant? I guess that's more of a Tom question, but.
No, that's an Ed question too.
Okay.
Ed's done a great job of mapping them out. In fact, we found a couple that were redundant. We haven't seen any that we need to add, and when we bring new neighborhoods online, we often will accept the dedication of the hydrant. I'm forgetting the project down by the polo fields, but we accepted 2 hydrants down there.
Yeah, there's that entire project, I think there's 6 altogether through that area. Right next door to City Hall here, the townhouses went up, those were dedicated to the City of Beacon.
Mm-hmm.
So even as new projects go on, the Edgewater project, that water main and fire hydrants will be dedicated to the City of Beacon. So even as new projects are going forward, there are hydrants and fire protection that are going in.
And part of the other benefit of this law is it standardizes the type of hydrant that we use. We use this Mueller type, and that's good because then we only need one set of parts, and we know how this works, and we know which manufacturer to go back to. So over time, we're trying to transition all of these private hydrants to that same standard, to be painted the same color, to be prepared in the winter if it's prone to being plowed under. They need to have the plow sticks, what do you call them?
The hydrant marker.
Hydrant marker.
Just call them little flags.
Little flags, yes.
Yeah. They also need to put a band around them so that you know what type of flow rate it has as well.
You'll see on some of our hydrants that there's bands around them, blue, green, and they represent the amount of flow that comes out of the hydrant.
Where there are some potentially excess hydrants are on Main Street, because we've had that discussion, and that someday
We're still
we might
trying to
wanna-
get rid of your hydrant.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
So-
it's
That
a
one's-
bigger job than you'd ever imagine.
That one's
understand.
extremely problematic to remove.
Well, yeah, but there might be other approaches besides removing, so.
It's still problematic.
Don't engage. Yeah, don't engage. I got you.
This is
I got
another
you.
day. Don't
I'll
worry.
cover this. Don't let them take you down the rabbit hole.
So in reading this, they have to do have their own inspection done,
That is correct.
and then they submit the report.
Yeah.
to
And
the
it's just
city.
like it's included in their fire inspections, so they have to verify that their sprinkler systems are working, their smoke detectors, like there's an annual inspection that you're supposed to do, and if you have private fire hydrants, they're included in that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And these are for code and insurance requirements that these private owners are installing the fire hydrants where there's not municipal service? I mean, is that the basic reason why we end up with private fire hydrants?
some is just in the case of, there's some factories, they're still operational here in Beacon, so when it was installed, it was theirs. There was never an offer of dedication, so they maintain private ownership. And assuming, yes, for fire protection and insurance.
You know, an example is Groveville off of Mill Street on Fishkill Avenue. All of that infrastructure is owned by the two owners of the properties there, and then Hiplofs, which is the new owner. But the streets are owned privately, the water and sewer infrastructure, Ed and I have been going through trying to do inflow and infiltration inspections. He'll talk more about that in the next law. And but again, we found that all those fire hydrants were privately owned, and they're necessary. We just need to make sure they're well maintained.
And that actually reminds me that a part of the process for new fire hydrants is that when they submit plans to the planning board or for approval, they need to detail not only the fire hydrant but also the specs, and so that will help, you know, the engineering consultants, Ed's department, everyone to, you know, really look at what those fire hydrants are being put in, where they'll be put in, and just to, you know, keep that registry up to date.
Everybody good? Okay. So the other half of the fire hydrants is an amended, a resolution amending the schedule of fees, which is separate, right?
Yes.
Want to take us through that?
Yeah.
Or just how it connects to the first thing?
Yeah, so what we did is as we reviewed it, we looked at fees for to use the private fire hydrants, or use the publicly owned fire hydrant, excuse me. So the city would provide them with a water meter, we would bill them for the water usage, and then there's going to be a rental fee for the use of the hydrant for $125. And that protects the city from any damage, misuse of the hydrant on top of the water billing. Also, for us to do periodic inspections, make sure it's operational. And we limited the time, like as Christian said earlier, we are limiting the time frame for the usage just for through the spring and summer months, and discontinuing it in the fall. The other one is $125 for the privately owned installation of the fire hydrant. So for city to be there to review the permitting and monitor the installation to make sure it's installed properly. Typically, on most installations, you need the thrust blocking to make sure the hydrant doesn't blow off when it's energized. So it's stuff like that to make sure that it's done in proper accordance.
I put my glasses on so I can actually read. There we go. And then
And Ed, the fee for the water use on public hydrants is per month?
We billed quarterly. Oh, yes.
$125 per month?
Yes.
Yep. And then we bill the water quarterly?
That's correct.
Okay.
So the fees are in addition to the water usage?
Yes.
That's right.
And then how do you establish that these are reasonable in both directions, right? Not too high, not too low? You got a benchmark of any kind?
So some of it we looked at, for the rental fee, we looked at other municipalities. And some of the municipalities we're charging up to $500. So the 125 seems somewhat reasonable. For the inspection fee, it was more of we looked at like a 4-hour window of staffing to be on site to do that.
And I know we tried to have it all be $125 just to be consistent and easy and predictable.
Thank you.
I know, I was thinking that installation was cheap. The 125.
Well,
That's the inspection.
It's for the inspection. We're not doing the installation. It's for the monitoring of the.
But you have to be there, right?
Yes, yeah.
I mean, just for the time.
It's a good, I don't think it's unfair either way. I mean, we try to cover our cost, with things like fees, you try to cover your costs. They're not to make money, they're not to lose money. You want to cover your time.
And just, sorry.
And it's for the safety of the city too. So it's a positive that they're putting in these private fire hydrants also.
Yes.
And just for reference, as for the fire hydrants in the past 4 to 5 years have gone from $2,500 to $3,500. So the additional $125 for like the rental fee, it helps just to help cover those costs in the event that something does go wrong with it.
That was one of my questions. How much does a fire hydrant cost?
Too much.
Well, yeah, it depends if you're extending pipe, and gets really expensive. If you're just cutting one off an existing pipe, apparently that's really expensive
No, that's
too.
really expensive. Don't go down the rabbit hole. Don't engage, Ed.
Who's
talk
gonna,
about
who's
it
gonna rule
tomorrow,
the mayor
man.
out of order?
We will talk about this another time.
I still have the gavel.
I know you do.
All right. We good? Okay, so that's the fire hydrants. The next two concerning sewer, and the first one is a termination of illegal sewer connections. Shocked to know that we might have some of those still. What you got?
So for over the past decade and longer, the city's been trying to repair I&I and correct I&I, and so for the public is
I&I stands for?
infiltration and inflow. So our sewer system is designed for what's called sanitary sewer. So it's what comes out of the drains in your property. I&I is groundwater, rain, runoff. So our system is not designed. We have a separate system. So runoff, rainwater is to go to the storm sewer. I&I is that groundwater, rainwater that's introduced into our sanitary sewer, and it's not designed for those additional flows. So going back to my opening statement, we've spent over $12 million this past decade to repair our sewer, investigate I&I, and make I&I corrections. And we continue to make improvements to our sewer system and our wastewater treatment plant. This year, you guys, I believe, contract was awarded to TAM Enterprises for the West Main Street Pump Station and Force Main. The past few years, we did the North Interceptor and constructed a new headworks building at the sewer plant. This is all improvements to our system. But as we continue to battle with peak flows or increased flows during rainstorm events, we've found that there's what are illegal sump pumps in our system. And the building department has been locating them during inspections of properties for building permits and various reasons. But in our code, it does stipulate that you cannot have these connections, but the way the code is written, it says you had to make, as a property owner, you had to make the necessary corrections, which is kind of vague and limited. So we wanted to strengthen that law to where if you have an illegal connection, then you have to not just make the necessary correction, but you have to make the correct action and have it discharged to the storm.
And one of the key pieces of this proposed local law is that it requires persons or buildings found with these illegal I&Is to provide proof that they have remedied it, to provide proof that they have disconnected or rerouted and done something legal with their stormwater runoff.
So an example of an illegal one would be, I take all of my gutters and connect the downspout into the sanitary sewer.
Correct.
That's correct.
That would be an illegal I&I,
Yeah.
right? Okay, I just want to provide a good example for the public to hear it. Remember that. Don't do that.
And the reason that impacts us is we have a design flow for the wastewater treatment plant. We average about 3 million gallons a day that we take in. We're designed for 6 million gallons, but on some of these really heavy rains, we'll exceed the measurable amount that we can actually document, which is 18 million. So we're 18 million plus. And what that's done is in the last 4 months, it's impaired the biological systems that break down our sludge, because it just washes them out. So again, this is going to be an incremental battle over a period of decades, basically patching here, fixing there. We'll have other projects we'll discuss with you probably in the next 2 weeks about another area where we have found I&I. As as developers are coming, we're making them look at their own systems to make sure, for instance, like that if they have a private pump station, that stormwater pipes aren't going into that. And that if they do, that they're going to sever that connection and connect back into the separate storm drain system.
How many of these illegal connections would you say you've found over the course of the past year?
I would just, over the past 2 months, it's been 4.
Okay.
You know, and Bruce's department found one, and the plumber was there, and they cut, it was a sump pump, so they disconnected the pump, they cut it, but that doesn't mean someone's not going to come back and reconnect it. So they made, at that point, they made the necessary correction, but it's not the ultimate correction that we were looking for.
Now, there are rare circumstances where we will make an exemption on this because there are some properties that are so constrained or they have nowhere near them that has a storm drain system. So there is a process in this new law that basically says, you know, if you make good cause show to the building inspector that you have nowhere else to put this water, that we can actually then permit it and then get a fee for it. Because essentially, you're paying for your sewage by your water bill. Your water usage drives your sewer bill. If you're putting this water that you didn't pay for into our system, we still need to treat it and deal with it. So it has a fee for that as well. These are going to be rare, but an example might be where you have buildings really close together on Main Street and there's literally nowhere for the water to go. Yeah. Or alternatively, you're on a small lot, and if you were there's no storm drain in the area, and you would have to put this water over land, and it might end up impairing the property of your neighbor. So in those cases, we would consider a waiver. But again, our goal is to nibble this I&I issue down to as small as we can get it.
When we have the flooding, do you detect that, like, can you see that you're having an issue, and can you kind of figure out where it's coming from?
Not without flow metering in the system. So at the sewer plant, there's a master flow meter for flow that enters the plant, and the flow enters the plant through what's called the north interceptor, which comes in through the recycling center, and then there's the south interceptor, which traverses through the old, the solar farm at this point. So we would have to build back. We've done flow metering throughout the system to help identify areas, and that was part of some of the I&I work that we've done previously. And it does help pinpoint. The one thing with some pumps is it's more of if it's as the mayor had referenced, if it's a downspout or rain gutters, as soon as the rain event ends, that I&I ends. But with the sump pump, once the ground is saturated, they just keep running and running and running. So it is like flow metering, but it's also the getting in and televising and getting in doing the inspections to help verify.
And Ed has mentioned to me on a couple of occasions, like, we'll have a rain event. 24 hours later, the storm drain system is empty, but the sanitary sewer is still overflowing, and that indicates in that area sometimes you can kind of chase that problem up manholes to see where does that start, where does that end, and I know his staff have done that as well.
Chris, did you say it's part of the new law that there are exemptions? Is that
it's an existing provision in the code.
Okay.
It's not actually captured here, but it's been on the books for a while, and so this is kind of supporting that in a manner.
And I think, did you update the fee, Christian?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so that's, yeah.
So that is the next item, which is a resolution to amend the fee schedule. To basically, as Chris had mentioned, when there are these types of connections and they are discharging into the sanitary sewer system, because it's not coming from the water going into the property, there's not really any way to meter it, and there's still plenty of costs for treatment that are associated with that. So while looking at that, we proposed a $100 quarterly fee for the waiver. And that is to help capture and pay for the treatment of that essentially unmetered sanitary water.
And sorry, where did that 100 number come from? Was that just an average?
There was some existing stuff that we looked at, but it was also looked at it was more of looking at what would be like the minimum bill and then doubling it for the sewer usage. And that got us roughly to the $100. It would be, I forgot the exact number off the top of my head, so I do apologize, but that's kind of where that came from. Because it's very hard, without having a meter on your sanitary sewer, it's very difficult. If we called it $1,000, then if we created like $1,000 bill, and there's some additional fine language that's in the law as well, but if we build them for $1,000, then it becomes detrimental to the property owner as well, because we are offering, there in the small instances where we can offer a waiver for it.
And broken down quarterly, that's approximately $25 a month.
Any other questions?
33.
33.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I went to law school.
30 bucks a month.
I just have
It's
one
a
other
few coffees.
question on the penalties for the offense of the fee no less than 1,000 and no more than 1,500. Where does that come from?
That's actually in the city code.
Yeah.
That was,
Okay.
yeah, it's in another spot in the city code, so we wanted to put it in a consistent area. And that's for, obviously, like you said, if the offense has been found, you don't remedy it you can remedy the situation, and then you continue to do it. That's where we added that too.
Yeah.
So it would be like 1,000,
Yep,
and then if you don't do it, like 1,500.
yes.
And that would only be imposed when someone has previously terminated, and then they reconnect anyway, so it's kind of like this.
Oh, the
you know,
reconnection.
Yeah, it's a reconnection, and so it's like they're intentionally going back and doing exactly what they were told they can't do and apparently remedied.
Okay, thank you.
All right, everybody good? Did we just cover the fee schedule as well, or do we need to pick that one up separately?
I think we got it.
I think we did, right?
Ed better get out of here before he starts talking about the hydrant on Main Street.
Can we just touch?
We are going to touch on the meters.
Okay.
Can we?
Oh, yeah, sure.
We just wanted to give you a quick update because Ed has been working diligently on getting our meter project going.
So gratefully, we're finally at a point where we can start moving forward with our meter upgrade project. There's significant delays in the inventory for the meter upgrade, and also we've been working behind the scenes, not just waiting for the inventory, but getting the different computer systems to talk to each other. So we're still working on that to try to make that communicate. So the new meters will communicate through what's called Census Analytics, but we need that to also talk to our billing software. So that's one of the things that we've been working on in the background to make sure those two systems can talk to each other. So starting next week, there'll be mailers going out to residents in the first ward, in both in English and in Spanish. That will explain the process. It has my phone number. There is a website that will be listed on the letter directing the residents where they can go to schedule their appointments, as well as a phone number they can call to schedule their appointments.
And we'll send the letter around to the council tomorrow.
The vehicles will be marked with a magnetic logo with the company VEPO, V-E-P-O, and the city logo. And when a resident makes an appointment, or property owner makes an appointment, if you provide them with your email address prior to the appointment, you will receive a message with a picture of the technician, so you know exactly who'll be entering your property.
And we'll be announcing this on the website as soon as we have the go date for those mailers to go out. We'll be doing social media, and then we are able to use our Rave 911 system to put a call into any of the households in the first ward that are captured in this area. If you are not on the Rave 911 system and you'd like to be, please give us a call at 838-5000 or go to our website to sign up. And that's for emergency and very important announcements. So if we're closing a road, if we're doing something that might disrupt your street, we can make precise calls. So we use it judiciously and infrequently so that when you get a call, you know it's something important.
Once the letters go out, how long do people have to make their appointments? What's the expectation?
So we've built in a penalty. So we're requesting that they do it get it scheduled as quickly as they can. So after, I believe, 90.
I think our,
Oh, I'm sorry. 30 days without being able to schedule, then there's a penalty to do that. So
Okay, great.
And that's from experience.
yes, there was surrounding communities. Surrounding communities have done this exact program. They did not institute the penalty, and the program dragged on much longer than anticipated, or what should have been. And even after the penalty, some people just still would not allow access to their property.
The meters are inside.
Inside.
And they'll see that on their water and sewer bill, like if they get that penalty, or will that?
Yes, yep.
Okay. And then one other question, and I'm blanking on what the question was. So you asked your question.
Yeah, no, I'm just going to relay also the experience when we last put in the last set of meters.
Yes.
We had the same issue, right? We still have homes that we never got the old system in that we're replacing now with the new system, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but also the last time when we tried this, we also were doing it internally with staff. It's just not feasible. So having a contractor do it through our vendor, that's the best course of action.
And it's good, if people call you, it's good to remind them that there's a mutual benefit of this. Now we don't have to drive a vehicle around the city reading these. They're read digitally. You can actually get an account where you open up your account and you can see your water usage in real time. We can flag it so that if there are large jumps in your water usage, which usually indicates a large leak, we'll know before you've been billed for a quarter. Some people will get a bill for $4,000 or $5,000 and say, well, I didn't even know I had a leak in my basement. This is something, if you're signed up with the system, you have this new MXU unit, we can actually have alarms on this, so if your water usage jumps tenfold, we can actually send an email or make a call and say, hey, your water usage jumped by a factor of 10 in the last 2 days. You might want to check and see if you have a leak.
It'll also help us too for the vacant properties, or in case a property's been left unattended, which happens quite frequently in the winter months.
Yeah.
I remembered my question. What is your guesstimate, estimate on like going into the next ward? And can I assume we're just going to go 1, 2, 3, 4?
No, what we envisioned, and this was actually envisioned several months back, was to start in Ward 1 to kind of get the ball rolling and then get momentum going and then start blanketing the rest of the city. Ward 1, since it's more of a residential area, we felt that as a smaller scale, and plus last time when I was out at the end of the year last year for personal reasons, but we were anticipating kicking this off in January, but due to the inventory, the delays in inventory, that really kind of slowed the process. But that was also the reason why we were going to kind of slow roll it for winter access and stuff. But we still want to maintain Ward 1 as to kind of feel out any kinks in the system.
Okay, so Ward 1, and then it'll go out to
Citywide.
everybody.
Yeah, and the map we have, we may touch adjacent streets, but it's focusing on Ward 1 as they do the mailers.
And just to, just thinking, I mean, it's May, so we're not thinking snowbirds, but people who do go away for 5 or 6 months at a time, if they communicate with you, if they got that card but they can't get it done, would they be penalized?
It's going to be the communication through the vendor, Beppo. So they'll handle the scheduling. As long as there's a level of communication, then we can move forward with it. If it's just like a blanket non-answer.
Okay. That helps. Thank you.
And sometimes when that penalty hits, that's when we'll get the call back. We'll work with people. Again, if it's chronic, the penalty will go. But, again, we're looking at whether or not somebody didn't realize that they get hit with the penalty, then they realize that, we're going to be a little flexible, at least in the beginning, and see how it goes.
And going back to, I live in a community that went through this. I don't live here in the city, but I do live in a community that went through this, and we had the same thing. So we had 3 notices, and after that, it was $500 a month until you responded. So it was very similar process.
So we're a bargain.
I was actually going to say this is an extremely common manner to get people to switch to new water meters, and this is actually a very reasonable surcharge than what I've seen in some other communities where they charge $500 plus for failing to upgrade.
And the other piece that you might get questioned on, we are not back charging the residents for these new MXU units. We're paying for it through a capital project. That capital project will be paid for over a period of years based on the water fees that are paid. So we're not coming in and then sending you a bill for, $500 for a new unit.
Everybody good? Okay. Ed?
Thank you.
Leave
Thank
while
you.
can.
Thanks, Ed.
Appreciate it.
All right, and then the last one is, and that is, Christian, you have to stick around, is telling us the source of the proposed name Arno Drive. I know the source, you probably do too.
Yep.
But we're also going to be authorizing the naming of a private street by that name.
Yeah. So I just want to preface this, that there could be changes to this resolution. This request has been forwarded to the city engineering consultant for some input and also review. So I just wanted to put that disclaimer out there. But essentially what we have here is it's the 248 Tioronda Avenue. And they're building 3 multifamily structures. And you don't necessarily want 3 of those structures to have one single address, and so they've requested to pretty much have their access drive named as a private drive. And that way, if there's an emergency, they can actually pinpoint which building it is, instead of just kind of giving a blanket 248 Tioronda, building in the middle, building at the farthest end. And so that is the request here. This would remain a private drive. It would not become city property. The owners would have the responsibility to maintain and keep it up, and so it's not really any cost. And here they are, in order to name it Arno Drive, the city council has to consent to that naming. And they've already checked with Dutchess County 911, there's no conflict, and so the next step would be to, I guess, let's wait until the city engineering consultant gets back to us with any comments, but then thereafter it would be council approval.
We did this a couple of years ago for the settlement camp, because there's a group of buildings all around the loop road that goes inside. So we gave that a name, which I'm forgetting at the moment, so that E911 could say, wouldn't have to say, well, you're going to go to the infirmary, where nobody knows what the infirmary is, and there's actually a number on each building now.
Isn't it Settlement Loop or something like that?
Yeah, something like that. Settlement Loop.
Well, we've done the same, Liam Drive is just down the street, River Ridge is just down the street.
Oh, and I'm sorry. One thing unique about this is it's already been proposed, so it's not like there's the creation of something new here. It's simply naming that drive Arno Drive instead of, whereas sometimes with private streets or things like that, it's actually, you need approval to create the physical street itself. That is not this. This is just authorizing the naming of the private drive. So there is a slight distinction there.
Okay, everybody good?
Lee, are you going to tell us who Arno is?
No, it's, my understanding of it is it's the river in Florence, right? The Ponte Vecchio goes over the Arno. Yeah.
Jeff is nodding.
I figured it was like a family name or something.
Yeah.
I did the research too and saw that, but I was curious why they chose that still. I mean,
just figured, who's
I
the
didn't see anything,
Italian, right?
I didn't see anything problematic with the name in my research, but I was curious.
For people like me who are getting a little nearsighted, I did read it as Amo Drive, so they might find that comes up depending on the size of the font, but I think that is a minor thing that won't be an issue on street names, I'm sure, or the 911 system. I had a legal question for you, I think, Christian.
Yep.
And this might be fine, but I noticed in the resolution, it refers to the 3 buildings as multifamily, but I believe 2 of them are residential and 1 of them is non-residential, and I didn't know if that mattered for the purpose of the resolution.
I'm seeing that on the site plan as well. We can make that correction. It's not material to this question, but thank you for pointing that out. We can make that correction.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, I think that would be important for consistency.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody good? I think I'm supposed to say that our next meeting is next Monday at 7 o'clock. It will be a regular council meeting where we'll vote on things and there will be public comment. Anything else from the council?
I just wanted to bring up, we have a public hearing next week to do with parking minimums, but it was something that, and last workshop, we talked about it, there were some outstanding items that I guess we didn't get a chance to talk about today. And so I didn't know, and maybe this is a question for you somewhat, Christian, of whether or not we're in a position now to delay the public hearing that is scheduled for next Monday. I'm thinking of those who might want to participate, and as much advance notice as if we can give, if we do know we want to adjourn that meeting. So I didn't know if we had to wait till that meeting or if we're able to talk about that now.
I would say you can talk about it now. yeah.
Okay, I wasn't sure if that made, we could also keep it, but know that we don't have any substantive changes since the last time we had it, so I didn't know if the council had a preference.
I know we haven't heard back from the county.
Yeah, that was
on it
one of
yet.
the things, I
So I
think,
think
was-
Nick had indicated we were going to adjourn
Yeah.
Okay.
from
Yeah,
the 20th to the subsequent meeting on,
Which I think is the 3rd of
yeah, it would be
June?
the 3rd.
So would it be okay when we post the agenda, we'll post the item because we voted on it,
Mhm.
but we'll also notice right there.
To
that
be
it's
adjourned.
Okay.
Yeah, we did
Great.
that one prior time, and it helps
Yeah.
let people know they don't have to come at that time.
Right, yeah. yeah.
Okay, thank you for doing that.
Great.
All right, we good? I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Pam,
Second.
Jeff, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, thank you all.
Thank you.